Why is it important for the denomination to maintain a church planting mindset? Why is it healthy for us?
My ministry would have been completely different had I not been around men of vision and men who understood that Jesus really is building His church, and if we're going to honor Him, He would be pleased to use us as part of that building of His church. Having that understanding of the mission of the church before you and being prayerfully bold, confident that Jesus really is going to build His church, and He really can do it in part through the Reformed Presbyterian Church. And it's exciting to be a part of it.
I think just being encouraged by seeing the Lord's blessing upon the work. The Lord's been very gracious to a lot of the church planting efforts that we've seen. And there's a contagious spiritual atmosphere that says, the Lord does answer our prayers, and Jesus is building His church.
One of the real blessings in church planting is that you're really put in an evangelistic situation. You've got to reach out with the gospel. You've got to motivate the core group to reach out with the gospel. Then you've got to keep motivating the congregation to go out with the gospel. And it's a wonderful opportunity because you can't just be complacent. You're really motivated to keep your eyes fixed on what Jesus has called us to do, which is to go out and disciple the nations.
One experience that I remember that really sticks in my mind is when we first came to Kitchener, and there's this little wooded area by our house, and I'd go out there to pray every morning, and there I was in this morning praying, and I realized we had nothing because we were just a parachute drop. No elder at the time. That's a whole other question in terms of the wisdom of that. No people, no one. And I was praying to the Lord, I cannot create this. There's no way I can make people come. What am I going to do? Why would they want to come? And it struck me how dependent I was on the Lord. But what really struck me all the more, and I remember an intense feeling of sorrow and shame, is that I didn't have that in my previous ministry in Walton because I took for granted that people would just come to church and show up at church. And so somehow, suddenly now I thought, the work of the church and the ministry is one of the Spirit. But it is just as spiritual in an established congregation. We just take for granted, that people are going to show up, and so there's you can coast through your ministry. But you can't. You have to continually cry out to the Lord that His Spirit would work through you and through the members of the congregation, that He keep this thing working.
There's a certain urgency in church planting. You can't be complacent. It's do or die. And so there's a certain urgency, and that urgency is very constructive. It makes you very purposeful in your Christian life and in your Christian witness.
For our church, and as well as for Lafayette, for our sending church, our mother church, the whole process of church planting has really brought back the urgency of the gospel, the urgency of evangelism, the urgency of community involvement and service.
One of my customers, the president of the organization, critiqued his own company this way. He said, "This company believes they will be strong and prosperous if they simply save a few more pennies on things." So, for instance, they would exert great effort to use the back sheet of a copy paper so we could recycle that one piece of paper and save the company some minuscule amount of money. He was all for saving money and avoiding unnecessary expense. But you can't save yourself into prosperity. And the kingdom is never built by a solid retrenchment to high ground that can be well fortified. The kingdom is built by going forth and conquering new areas. So this president was looking for new markets and new customers. And I think that translates rather well conceptually into saying that it won't do to simply preserve the congregations we have. We're trying to build a kingdom here, and that kingdom's not going to be built by building better forts. It'll be built by conquering places the enemy holds now.
An article I read by Tim Keller was really instructive to me, that he remarked, and I've come to really agree with it, that a healthy church is a church planting church. And he was pretty clear on what he meant. What he meant was that every church at all times should be participating in the work of church planting to some degree, whether praying and planning, financially supporting, sending out, or being sent. To some degree, every church should always have this on their plate. It should be in front of every session, every year. What are we doing in terms of church planting? And I think that it provides for the right kingdom outlook.